All right, guys, we are making it through our winter storm. Tim Pandajis, you and Evan have been going nonstop since when? You guys came in early this afternoon.
We started streaming today at around 1.
Yeah.
And we just wrapped up at midnight, so it's been a lot.
It's been a
long duration storm. And, it was really just a full day of watching the dry air went out for a while. And then finally we saturated and we got the snow coming on down. So that was good. That was a nice moment.
A little bit of relief.
It was
finally.
A little bit of relief, yeah.
So full transparency, okay, you guys know Tim Pandajis, our chief meteorologist, Craig Moeller, longtime meteorologist here, and Evan Stewart is behind the scenes right now pushing some buttons. We'll hear from him as well. He's been working with you, and Hunter Force was in. All this week we've been talking about this, and what we wanted to do with this live stream was just really kind of pull back the curtain, talk about what we've been watching, what we think about this, what we're still dealing with, because we still have some more, including this little batch of snow that kind of was working back to the north. So we're not quite done with this yet.
And, not only in our area, this has been a fascinating storm. There was accumulating snow in Savannah, Georgia, Charleston, South Carolina, up to Myrtle Beach, to Wilmington, places that don't
typically see it, yeah.
And even down to Metro Atlanta got a couple of inches. And then you get into the western South Carolina, western North Carolina, northeast of northeast of Charlotte, picked up 14 inches of snow. More snow than they've gotten in the last 10 years.
That's amazing.
It was unbelievable. And it was almost like a barbell because you had western North Carolina get slammed, eastern North Carolina get slammed with about a foot on either side. And then in the middle, the dry slot. They got Raleigh, which always gets Raleigh. But even at the end, it started to fill in there as well, and they still did end up with a little bit of some snow, but nothing nearly like what they got in the western and eastern part of the state.
The models this week have been literally all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, right up until the last minute, too.
Yeah, this was interesting. So, we obviously work as a team here at 13 News Now. And again, under Tim's guidance, we all share ideas on things. We talk about the forecast and we kind of work it over. Evan, we've been doing this for so long, and it's always, we pride ourselves in the collaboration. We get a pretty good feel for what we think, but even the Weather Service, as we have been talking with them over the past couple of days, I read one of the discussions this morning. They said, gosh, the confidence really isn't there, even like just 6 to 12 hours out. This was really unusual. What struck you as so unusual about this thing?
I think that the models were just run to run.
Yeah.
They were just erratically swinging in either direction. Even yesterday, there's a couple of shorter range models, and typically when you go down the forecasting track, you have the long range models that'll diagnose the pattern, right? And then you see consistency with that of where it's going to develop. And then once you get within 72 hours, you're starting to get within range of all the shorter range. And that typically will increase the forecast confidence. It almost went in the opposite direction this time because we're like, okay, now we're able to get a little more in line with snow totals, timing, things like that, what type of precipitation we'll see. And it was just giving us no help.
Yeah.
And, we are afforded to work in a time where we have so much technology and the models have gotten so great over time to have it almost be like a calamity like this that they just aren't aligning at all. And even after it started snowing, the models weren't even initializing, showing what the radar was showing.
Yeah, and what he means by that is when you take a look at the models, if they're not showing what's happening right now, how do you put confidence that they're going to have it right in 4 hours or 5 hours? So it is really interesting. This was a little different setup. A lot of the model projections that we see and we'll say, hey, well, it's looking like it's, they're trying to show this amount or that amount. They were accounting for a snow ratio a lot of times of kind of 1 to 10, 1 inch of liquid to 10 inches of snow. This was so dry that we knew there was a potential for those ratios to be a lot different. So there was a lot to consider in that. But the fact that it had to overcome the dry air that was in place, that kind of worked against it. So this honestly, for me, coming in now, and I'll be with you through tomorrow morning. We've got some other things we'll discuss as we look forward to tomorrow. There'll be some issues. But you guys had the tough assignment leading up, and Taylor Stephenson as well this morning, taking a look at this saying, okay, is this going to start? Or not? We were confident it was going to start, but when, how long is it going to take for that low level of the atmosphere to moisten up?
And it was so unusual, too, because typically when you're going to get the dry air causing the snow to not really reach the ground yet, you're looking at the areas to the north and west that would be drier from the flow coming in from the northwest. It was the opposite. We had our coastal communities that typically would be a lot more moist in the lower levels from a northeast wind coming off the ocean. It was just not doing it. And the radar was showing, like moderate to heavy snow, and we're getting reports of nothing happening at the ground. And, you kind of rewind the, wind particles back, and you go back on the satellite and radar wondering, why is the air so much drier than initially thought? Where did this dry air come from and originate? And you look back, and it looks like there was part of that high that was over the Ohio River Valley helped to downslope some dry air from the mountains to the west. And that came on in and lowered our dew points. Earlier this morning, dew points were below zero.
Yeah, I know it was just bone dry. And you take a look, like your skin, you might be feeling like chapped lips, your hands. But this air was so exceptional. And when you talk about downsloping, when air goes up the side of a mountain, for instance, the temperature cools as you go up. You get to a dew point, the air saturates. A lot of times you get rain over the mountains or snow or whatever. On the downside, you get downsloping winds.
Oh, there we go.
Evan's amazing. He's pulling this out. When you get downsloping winds on the backside, there's a separation as the winds come down, and as it descends, it compresses. Typically, it heats up. You're not thinking about that in winter right now, with it being so cold, but as the air separates from the dew point, we get drier air. So that's interesting that we had that little bit of a component.
Yeah, and Evan, if you can rewind radar here and just go back as far as we can go on local radar, because basically what happened, what broke the dry air holding out, was we finally got some intense snow bands.
Yeah.
Which earlier today, the Storm Prediction Center put out a mesoscale discussion, which they typically do for setups for severe weather and things like that, but they do heavy snow setups as well, because it can be convective in nature. Right. And they put one out, and they were like, heavy snow bands developing and lifting north. And I was like, okay, if those do get here, we're in good shape. We're going to be fine. Yeah. And, we're watching it, and then it hits the border, and then it finally hit it and, eroded all the dry air. And then you can see, if we go back to even just a couple hours ago, we had the snow band, and then rapidly we saw it deteriorate. Almost a hole develop over Surrey, James City County, and it just shut the snow down. Yeah, because the storm, as it's beginning to pull away to the east-northeast, we're starting to get that wraparound dry air flow coming in from the north. And those winds are ripping down the Chesapeake Bay, extremely dry air from areas that didn't see much precip at all today. And look at it, how it just ate it away. And still at this hour, as we go to the current time almost, it's still a battle. Yeah. There's still these heavy bands in northeast North Carolina that are trying to go up against it, and you're on that fine line now getting into South Suffolk and portions of Chesapeake that are back into some light snow. So it's just fascinating that just this area has been the battleground for the dry air versus a developing nor'easter that's trying to throw a lot of moisture up and over an Arctic air mass that typically would bring us some nice appreciable snows, which we did end up getting in a lot of spots, but not everywhere.
It's so challenging to get these, and one of the things you were saying, we live in this time where we have all of this technology, all of this data, but the converse side to that is that everybody gets a forecast on their phone. Everybody assumes that we can now call, what we're calling now accurately out, days in advance would have been just unimaginable 10 or 15 years ago. And now the expectations there are still issues and some just forecast challenges that we still work through. I think, it's important to note when we talk about, hey, we knew we were in good shape. From a forecast standpoint, we don't want people to deal with hardships and calamities from rough winter weather. But when you call for snow, it's a relief to see that it actually comes. You don't want to have a busted forecast because then, everybody wants to know what happened in this, and, all of that. So, again, that relief came when you saw it start to fill in. And we have had some pretty significant snows down across North Carolina. A little bit here, and it looks like, we're not quite done.
Yeah, Elizabeth City already had a report of 7 inches. I mean, and it's still coming down very heavily there. So I wouldn't doubt if we see some spot closer to the Albemarle that gets double-digit snow totals by the time it's done.
And that was kind of the range. I mean, I think, I guess the final kind of call that you had made coming up this afternoon was what? Was it
2 to 4? Through south side. And that looks
and
verified
we're
mostly,
getting there.
yeah.
I don't know, Evan, if you have those snow totals, because he had them up earlier, I think. But I think so far, at least 2 in Norfolk, right?
Yeah, it was 2 as of, 10 o'clock, I think, so 2 hours ago, and there's still snow.
And we're still seeing some snow.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to speak to what I experienced coming in, because we talked about this. I actually, there you go, there's some of the different snow reports so far. You can see Southern Shores 5 inches and a Hosky 4.5. So some pretty good snows down to the south, and it's still coming down. But what I wanted to mention, Tim, driving in, and I was up around the bay, okay, not far from the airport. The winds were blowing around. This is a light powdery snow, and the road conditions and the visibilities, it was so crazy how variable it would be. You would go from, essentially dry roads where it's like, oh, it looks like, we don't have much accumulation here. Well, what's happening is that inch or inch and a half or whatever you have was being blown around because it's so light and fluffy. It's such a dry snow that you would see over to the side of the road where it was collecting maybe 4 inches of snow. I literally stuck my hand down into the snow, and there's this much of my hand was buried. So you would see some areas where it's fine, and then the same thing with visibility. I was like, okay, this isn't too bad, and all of a sudden the winds would swirl, and you could hardly see, the end of your hood.
Yeah, the near blizzard conditions that we were expecting, and that dry powdery snow too. When it gets driven over on the roadways, it compacts and it becomes very, very slick and very, very hard to remove as well. And with air temperatures that have been so cold, the brine solution, the salt, is not working all that well at temperatures this cold.
In places, yeah, for sure. And it was interesting too, they can only drop the shovels on the plow trucks if you have 2 inches down. Otherwise, sometimes they'll try to scrape a little bit if you get an inch and a half. But they're really, if you talk to like NCDOT when we were talking with them on the weather desk, they were saying, 2 inches is really what they look for. I saw a truck drop a plow, and all you saw were sparks coming off the road. That was around Ocean View earlier. So it's kind of that weird thing where, some of the brine solution was working. There were some roads that were wet. There were some roads that were snowpacked. There were some areas where they couldn't plow. Then I saw teams of plow trucks working other areas on 64 coming in. So
on my way in today on 264, they have the service areas for VTOL on either side, and there must have been 40 plow trucks sitting there staging. And I was like, whoa, they are going all out. And that's good. I mean, they were going to disperse, obviously, and cover the whole area. But
yeah, they were actually working in teams where you'd see 4 or 5 in a row, and they set them up, and then you'd see a lead truck, and then they'd
the plow brigades
try to work them. But again, depending on where you were, some areas saw the need for them. Other areas, it really hasn't been as bad. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention was driving in the variable road conditions. Coming down 64 to the 264 interchange. This is coming in from the north, all right, before you come into the 264 interchange right there, Virginia Beach. Very, very busy interchange. You went from kind of wet or treated roads, and there was actually a decent amount of traffic there because there were plow trucks out there, and they kind of had a collection. But when we came over to the side, that on-ramp was completely snow-packed. So we went,
around,
I mean, you went from driving on the roads to really needing to slow down, because if you hit that at the same interstate speed that you were going when the roads looked okay, you'd have been in a lot of trouble. So need to stress that, for anybody. Hopefully you don't need to get out and go anywhere tonight. You're just enjoying this stream from your home, and you're safe and you're good. But anybody that does think about going out, some of these roads are still really bad.
Yeah, and temperatures are not going to be warming up until we get to above freezing, probably by midday Monday.
Yeah.
That's the earliest, so you're looking at a lot of icy conditions through the day tomorrow.
That's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Now, we need to talk about something else going on, and that is these winds driving the tides. So far, I mean, we're still looking at moderate tidal flooding, I think, in most locations.
Sewell's did drop down to, I think, 5.1.
Really?
Yeah, so it's down to moderate.
Okay.
Like low-end moderate now, which is great. But you still got Lynnhaven Inlet, that's not, Duck Pier. Between 6 and 8 a.m. tomorrow, we're looking at the highest tides. But That may be a little overdone. More minor tidal flooding on our tools.
I will say, again, over at the Little Creek Marina in East Beach, they had gone from 5.7 to 5.5, so they'd come down a little bit, but still enough to create some issues. And some of those areas that are prone to flooding, we've got some areas that it takes a full moon, and we have some issues. So
we have that tonight.
That's that kind of exacerbating it. But with the winds, again, the concern is that there might be some areas that have the water up, and then as that water's receding and our air temperatures are sub-freezing, there could be some glazing or ice issues.
And the wind chills are dangerous. We've got an extreme cold warning, which we have not had in a long time. In fact, with the new verbiage, I don't think we've ever had one issued. It's only been 2 years around, but that's the same as a wind chill warning, I believe. Or the extreme cold warning replaced that. But wind chills down 0, 5 below.
5 below.
It's just going to be bitterly, just that biting cold when you step out the door tomorrow. And plus, you're going to have all the snow blowing around, hitting you in the face. It just
makes for a very unpleasant.
And there's no need to even go out there and shovel it because it's so light and powdery. I mean, it's all going to be uneven. It's going to blow away. Just let it be.
Yeah. We have 2 mics going on right now. Evan, take one of the graphics full just for a second. I'm going to actually walk over to you because I want to get your thoughts on some of this stuff as well. You guys have done a tremendous job. I asked these guys, I said, hey, do you want to do a live stream? And they're like, sure. But you guys have been at this for like 11, 12 hours, so I know you guys are exhausted. Evan, I was interested in getting your thoughts for a second just on this, relative to some of the other storms that we've had that have really stuck out in your mind. I mean, we've been doing this since the mid to late 90s. I know you've been here for a long time. This is a pretty raw situation.
Right. I think the biggest thing with this that we're looking at is, the winds and, those wind chills that we're looking at as we go into tomorrow morning. We've got wind chills, as you mentioned, that are going to be down, below 0. We don't get that very often here. And Tim and I, we started, I guess it was Tuesday, we were looking at hours below 0 or hours below freezing.
Yeah.
And we are now, 96, 97?
So we're going 4 full days now at 11:40.
And, we're going to go several more days, and I think that's going to put us at least in the top 10 stretches of hours below 0.
Freezing.
Below 0 Celsius. I know. Sometimes the mind works in Celsius. So below 32 degrees, below freezing. And, I was looking back, I think some of the longest stretches were only about 5 days, to get into some of the top 10 longest stretches. So we're going to be in some of the, longest stretches for cold weather. And what's interesting is, you think back, you look at the history, the winters of the 1800s, late 1800s, the early 1900s, you always hear people talk about how it was so much colder. I mean, my grandfather talked about, the Elizabeth River freezing over and people walking across the Elizabeth River between Norfolk and Portsmouth. And he always told me it was a hot dog stand, but it ended up being a bar that was set up in the middle of the Elizabeth River. And, so to think that, we're going to be in hours below freezing, that is going to rival, we're not going to have the Elizabeth River freeze over, but we're going to have hours, below freezing that rival some of those big cold snaps.
And some of the local retention areas, some of the bodies of water are going to be freezing over. They're going to be ice on the surface. It's important to remind folks, stay off that stuff. Don't think that it's going to support you. Even if it looks like it's frozen solid, and yes, it's been cold, again, don't trust that ice because we've already had some issues, other parts of Virginia where people have been into serious trouble, animals rescued as well, venturing out on the ice. So that's something else to think about. And again, this hasn't been unique to Hampton Roads. I mean, we talk about it here because the impacts have been pretty amazing, but northern parts of Virginia, up around the D.C. area, they've also seen the incredible amounts of ice and snow. They've had problems getting rid of it. So, they've wound up what they're calling icecrete up there, because there were so many layers of freezing and refreezing and whatever. They have these sheets of ice. They started putting it at RFK Stadium, just dumping it there. They had to come up with some place to go with it all. So as we're looking at this right now, there are some areas that appear to be pretty much in the clear. I mean, we're not seeing anything up on the peninsula right now, middle peninsula, those western areas. It's still hanging in, fairly light, but still coming down across parts of the south side, and then more intense down around the Albemarle.
Yeah, the returns are definitely getting lighter in south side right now, and probably still moderate down through Elizabeth City. Looking probably another 2-3 hours of snowing there, and then pulling away to the east.
Yeah.
We're not really seeing as much support from the main low as it's pulling too far away now to support it. So
it is interesting, and again, the models have been pretty good. We took a look at the global models. You take a look at like the global forecast system, the GFS, the Euro, the Canadian. There's all these ensembles that we take a look at, and they've been advertising this thing pretty well. We declared the weather impact alert, I think it was on Tuesday,
Right.
wasn't it? And, you know, it's a little bit, we almost fight, you know, weather fatigue here because we want to give people as much heads up as possible. And again, it was a well-advertised storm, but this is on the heels of the previous system,
2 weeks in a
which
row.
brought more mixed precipitation
Right.
to the immediate Hampton Roads area, but we had the ice and the snow farther inland. So this has been one of those things, you know, how do you feel about the overall forecast with this system? You know, they're going to be
how our forecast played out.
yeah, just in the lead up to it and everything else. I mean, you have to feel pretty good about the forecast.
Well, I mean, our original snow totals were high, so
Sure.
obviously we're not going to hide that. They were high. We didn't hit the 4 to 8 that we went for in South Side. It happens. We downgraded about 24 hours out from the storm, and we came within those totals.
And I will say that, you know, we say this, and this is not, again, just to, cover our backs or whatever, but we will say, guys, this is a thing that can be adjusted up or down.
Yeah.
When we throw out those totals, this isn't like, hey, let's throw out some crazy totals and get everybody to worry about this or watch us or run out and buy groceries or whatever. That is not the case. Whenever we put out a forecast, it is based on the guidance and the thinking that is available at that time. So when people want to know 3 days out, you got to give them what it's looking like 3 days out. And you have to understand sometimes we can put out numbers and we have to adjust them up. You know, I mean,
And,
it works both ways.
That's originally, when I make a snowfall map, I'd much rather be conservative on it. That way there's room to move up.
Yeah.
Then move down. And because most of the time people will always remember the first map you put out and they'll commit it to memory, and when it doesn't come out that way, it's in their eyes not a verified forecast. This go around, when we went 4 to 8 and 8 to 12, it looked to me with the models that we had present at that time that there was a higher ceiling to go.
Right.
And
Some of the models were going like 32
so I was like,
inches,
there's room.
36 inches.
That was a conservative map at that time that I thought we could go higher. Obviously, that played out not the case because the dry air won out and ate away a lot of our accumulations. But that's basically just a look into what we're thinking.
Yeah. Something else, too, we have, and I think I'd had this conversation with Evan earlier, there will be changes from run to run to run to run. And we have to, it's almost like the scene in Braveheart where you're like, hold, you know, you're like waiting for like the attack.
Yeah.
But rather than jerk around the audience and, you know, with every whim and with every change, because the models literally for a while, I think were going, I know at the one point it was light in the morning, like with the graph model, and then heavier in the afternoon, then light and back. And even from shift to shift, sometimes the models have biases, you know, that are skewing one way or another, and they literally change, you know, run to run within the day.
Yeah. It was every storm's unique.
Yeah.
So we'll look back on this one and we'll learn lessons from it, and we go on to the next. And with our pattern, there's going to be a next probably sooner rather than later.
Well, this has been an incredible cold stretch. You mentioned how long it's been with temperatures sub-freezing. But, I mean, you think about, we had a mild fall. I mean, really, a mild end of summer, really, because we were like August, all of a sudden, it was hot like early in the season, and then all of a sudden, it was like, what happened? It's like fall came early here. August was nice. And then we continued to see the cool conditions. December wound up, you know,
very
cooler.
cold December.
Yeah. And then into January, we have had this cold weather, and it's still projected when you take a look at the 8 to 14 day outlook, we are still expecting cold conditions all the way through the middle of
Speaking
February.
of June, I mean, it's now February.
Yeah.
It is now February.
Officially, here we
Yeah,
are.
42 minutes in.
So you take a look there. Again, we had those handful of warmer days. I remember those days in the 70s. So
It was
nice.
nice.
Everybody's like, oh, this is great. We forgot what it was like to be able to run around in shorts and short sleeves and everything. It was great. And then it's like, nope, winter's like, hang on, ba-bam. You know?
And I think
So here we
February,
are.
I mean, it always balances out. So we started January on the mild side, and then we
Yeah.
recovered, the loss of the above average temperatures. Now, I think we just ended, we're probably down 2.5 degrees on average for the month. After being up at one point for the first half of January, I think we were up 10 degrees above normal. And then we
now it's
lost
gone.
12 degrees of the normal, like unbelievable.
Yeah, it's crazy how big a swing. The other thing, when you talk about nationally, I mean, we have out on the West Coast, it was so wet for so long. There's that outlook, that 8 to 14 day outlook. Look at the Northeast. Yeah, well expected, well below normal, very likely, through the middle of the month. But when you talk about like the whole east-west, coastal thing, they had so much rain and it was cold for a while there and we were warmer, and that pattern has absolutely flipped. Now California's enjoying dry weather. It's been beautiful out there on the West Coast while we've had the deep freeze here. So yeah, it's kind of like a teeter-totter.
Yeah,
One
it
side's
is,
warm,
yeah.
the other side's cold. So anyway, all right, so as we look ahead, we're going to be doing some more live coverage. A plan here, I'm going to be doing updates at like the top of the hour, and I know, I think you got another one if you want it. We're like, go Chief, you got it, whatever you guys want to do, you and Evan. But, we'll be here. Taylor's coming in as well. We're going to have more coverage for you through, I think, 10 o'clock tomorrow. We're going to be
starts at 5.
Doing some kind of extended stuff. And it is going to be interesting because, like I said, while a lot of the snow will be out by then, we're going to get a good look at just how much snow, especially I'm going to be interested to see what those totals are here, because we've had crews out, we've been getting the reports, but the snow keeps flying down there.
And it's the middle of the night, so you're going to have some pretty poor quality measurements, because if people aren't out there now getting the measurement, by tomorrow morning with it blowing around, you're going to get snowdrift measurements, you're going to get bare spot measurements. So it might be hard to get a true feel unless the measurements are getting taken right around now.
Well, it is interesting. It's a great point, because I said, a lot of times you go out, you just take a few measurements in an area, but in this case, you will literally have areas that got 4 inches that will show that they got 2, while areas that only got 4, other areas will show they got 6. So it's going to be kind of all over. That was 11 o'clock, so Elizabeth City with 4 inches. 7 in Grandy, there you go. Co-op report there, Avalon Pier. Snow down there, Wright Brothers.
That was 3:45 in the afternoon.
Yeah, that was a lot earlier. That's when it started. There you go, Sunbeam 5 inches. So pretty good snow reports down that way. And again, folks down in North Carolina treated to the snow this time. So many times we see it north and west, and they miss out this time. They're like, nope, we got it. So there you go. Again, tides are going to be an issue tomorrow morning, something else that we'll be busy watching. And then we should see some more sunshine a little bit later in the day tomorrow. So it's going to be cold.
Sure is. Yeah, bundle up.
That's going to be a thing. Any last thoughts on the system in general when you think about it?
No.
Feel pretty good about it?
Yeah.
I think so. Again, there's going to be people that said, oh, well, we were thinking, a lot of people hope for snow, and then I think they get a little bit disappointed if they don't get as much as maybe they were hoping. But I think when folks wake up, they are going to see snow over a good chunk, certainly south side and then North Carolina widespread. So I think folks are going to be happy. Evan, any last thoughts on any of this stuff, really? No? Not. You guys are both ready to go home and get some sleep.
Ready to wrap this up.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this live stream. And again, we'll have more updates, just kind of letting folks know how things are playing out overnight. And then join us for Daybreak tomorrow starting at 5. And we're going to have continued coverage through, I think, 10 o'clock. So
Sounds good.
We'll have you. You guys, thanks so much for joining us. Stay tuned to 13 News Now and 13 News Now Plus for more.